The Wichita Wind Surge are back at it. Come join us at Riverfront Stadium on April 24th. It's Wichita State Night, and the first 2,000 fans through the doors get this free Wind Surge hat in WSU black and gold. Doors open 5:30, April 24th. Go Wind Surge!
In today's world of market volatility and uncertainty, your retirement plans need to be front and center. With ever-changing tax laws, healthcare worries, and an unpredictable stock market, don't overlook the vulnerability in your retirement planning. Protecting your family and estate will be difficult with shifting policies in Washington. It's more important than ever to keep an eye on retirement.
Hi, and welcome into Eye on Retirement, the weekly show that keeps you in the know about all things retirement. I'm your host, Trey Bassa, and it was the best of tariffs, it was the worst of tariffs, and that's exactly why we've got a team of professionals gathered today. Today's panel includes Danny Goolsby, financial advisor and founding partner of Market Advisory Group, Lauren Dietz, tax advisor from Market Tax Services, Gerald Eidelman, estate planning attorney and founder of Eidelman Law Firm, and Mark Benefield, health insurance advisor from Market Medicare Advisors. Welcome in, everyone. Danny, tariffs were just implemented recently and the stock markets have reacted.
Yeah, so as you said in your opening comments there, it was the best of tariffs, it was the worst of tariffs. That's kind of a takeoff, if you will, of Charles Dickens' book, It Was the Tale of Two Cities, where he says in the opening line of that book, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. But we're trying to take a play off of those words here and talk about tariffs today and all the impacts that happen, both intentionally and unintentional consequences, if you will. So we want to talk about what happens when the tariff is applied. And some of this, I have to warn you right up front, can be a bit dry. So if you please take some caffeine while we talk about these, because what we see from a macro standpoint is not necessarily what happens on a micro standpoint. So the first thing we want to talk about as far as tariffs and how what happens is the unintended consequences could be, well, the people whoever we as a country are applying those tariffs to could retaliate on us. And I think we're seeing that right now with other countries, certain countries in the world are retaliating on us. And so if we raise a particular tariff to, for example, 10%, they'll say, well, we're going to put another 20% on you, and then we retaliate again, and 50%. It gets into a bidding war, if you will, on how silly can we get as countries, and who's going to blink first. That's what it gets down to. Another thing that tariffs do, it could be reduced economic growth. So at the end of the day, you'll have economists saying, what kind of growth can we expect in this particular cycle, in this particular business cycle that we are in? And what happens is a lot of times because of tariffs, that can slow down our economy or slow down growth. And what is the effect of that ultimately is it affects the stock market. And we'll get into that here in just a second. But another thing is that it can also affect stocks. So there's a lot of stocks out there and we're getting into earnings season, and stocks will, a lot of times on their earnings call, what they'll do is they'll give guidance, as they call it. They'll give guidance of what that particular board of directors for that particular stock or that particular company, what do they see going forward? But a lot of these companies, because of these tariffs, they are removing their guidance, which means that they're uncertain about what the future is going to hold. And so the stock market, I can tell you, does not like uncertainty. And so that's the next part of, or next bullet point I want to talk about is tariffs can bring a lot of uncertainty. And I think it's probably unanimous or almost unanimous in the financial world that people don't necessarily know how these tariffs are going to play out. We want them to play out well, but we're just not sure.
We're unsure of what's going to happen, right? But what we can do is we can start talking about how we're going to pay for these tariffs. How is it going to affect other countries or even people here in the United States?
Yeah, so technically tariffs are a tax. And so I have the luxury here at Market Advisor Group of using tax professionals, and today we have Lauren Dietz in. Let's talk about taxes and how these tariffs transfer to a tax to consumers.
Yeah, so I mean, tariffs technically are a tax, which is a tax on imported goods. It's not necessarily a tax that you as an individual pay, like on your tax return, but they are a tax that comes with lower profit or that they can lead to lower profit margins. It can potentially force companies to raise prices, which is a lot of times put back on the consumer. And I mean, it affects a lot of different products. As far as Bloomberg just, excuse me, just reported recently that they're expecting the cost of the iPhone to possibly triple.
Wow.
Which is crazy. I mean, iPhones are expensive as is.
Right.
And we also, I mean, one other thing that we talk about too is supply chain disruptions. This could cause a lot of delays, increased costs. It can have some really far-reaching consequences that we just haven't seen yet.
So you remember back during the time of COVID when you'd go to the grocery store and it seemed a little third worldish sometimes when you'd walk into the grocery store
Yeah.
and the shelves were empty.
Everybody remembers all the toilet paper being
The
gone.
toilet paper craze, right?
Yeah.
So there can be supply chain disruptions.
Now, other than just stock markets and business aspects of the tariffs, how does this affect retirees? What are the downstream effects for retirees?
So as Lauren was talking about taxes, again, a lot of these, when tariffs can be, historically, you look at tariffs can be inflationary, which just simply means they cost us more money. We don't, as a culture, necessarily see it on our level as consumers, but when tariffs are applied to companies, countries, goodness, that was tough. When they're applied there, then it does trickle down to us as consumers, which means higher prices for the things we pay. That's inflationary. There are another thing that from a long-term effects, a lot of times people as retirees, they don't know what kind of economy they're retiring into. When you think about it, there's lots of periods in time in history where the market did not grow whatsoever. And if you want, for example, let's go back to October of 1929. That's when the stock market crashed and started the Great Depression. Well, it took all the way to November of 1954 for the market to actually have new growth in it. Well, if you think about that, that's 25 years of time when the market had no growth whatsoever. And part of that was because of things economically going on in the system. Well, 25 years is more than a generation. And you may say, come on, Danny, really, that's kind of a one-off. That was the Great Depression. So let's talk about another time in history from 1966 to 1980. That's 14 years of time when there was, over that time period of time, it was 1% to 2% growth, essentially no growth in the market. And let me fast forward to another period in time where most retirees or pre-retirees in their work life, they can have a little bit better memory of that right now. And that is between 2000 and 2013. That's called in the financial world the lost decade, even though that's more than 10 years of time. But it's a lost decade because in 2000, 2001, and 2002, we had the tech bubble burst, and the markets were down over those 3 years, were down 50%. And then it came back in 2007, and then we had the mortgage crisis, and in 2007, 8, and 9, the markets were down by, again, more than half, and it took until 2013, 2014 before you got back to even. The point I'm trying to make with this whole process, with this whole stats here, is that tariffs can cause our money to dwindle, and so it causes inflation. But also what we've seen lately in the markets, we've seen volatility in the markets. So we've seen the markets really volatile down, and volatile down scares people. So if I'm paying for a product and it costs more to own, and I have less money to buy that product with, it really amplifies or magnifies, if you will, the concerns for retirees. How do you deal with that?
When your financial advisor isn't working with your tax advisor, who isn't working with your healthcare advisors, things can get missed and create even more surprise expenses. But at Market Advisory Group, we are all working together. To see if this could be the right team for you, all it takes is a 15-minute introductory phone call. To set up your 15-minute phone visit, call us at 833-MAG-REPORT. That's 833-624-7376. Or check out our website at ionretirement.com. There, you can also watch past episodes or submit a question for us to possibly answer in a future episode. In the next segment on Ion Retirement, we turn our attention to how tariffs could affect the healthcare system. Stay tuned. Hi, and welcome back to Ion Retirement. In the last segment, we talked about tariff fallout. Danny, is there any way for people to keep themselves on an even keel throughout all of this?
And the answer is yes. It depends on how you build your plan. So we were talking about, and we were having a takeoff on A Tale of Two Cities in Charles Dickens' book, where it was the best of times, it's the worst of times. I believe, again, I'm not trying to get political here, but I believe our president and our Congress, they're trying to get a good outcome for us, but it might be some pain as in the near term. And so tariffs can hopefully be good for us as a country, but when it comes to retirees, tariffs can also affect things like your income plan. So for example, you think of the attributes of a good income plan. Studies show and I read there's several studies out there that show this, that retirees have a better quality of life if they have a predictable income stream. One of the things that people love is being able to count on their income coming on a particular day of the month or a particular day of the week, if you will. And whether I get up or I don't get up, whether I'm across the country or whether I don't feel good or what have you, if I have a predictable income stream, it takes a lot of burden off my shoulders as a retiree. Well, tariffs can affect your income plan unaffectably. So for example, if you're trying to live off of your stock portfolio or your retirement income, or your retirement portfolio that is generated from the stock market, and the stock market takes a hit because of tariffs, what do you do about that? How do you protect yourself from that? If you've not built a plan that can protect you during stock market volatility, then the outcome of that is it could affect your ability to have predictable income in retirement. And I promise you, it's not a good thing to have. You don't want to be one of those ones that have to go back to work. It's okay if you retire and then you go back to work because you want to, but that's a different thing altogether, going back to work because you have to, because your portfolio is being beat up by these tariffs.
We talked a lot about tariffs, a lot of different things that can affect the stock market, but that's not the only thing that can affect a retirement plan. Mark, let's talk about healthcare. Are tariffs going to affect Medicare and healthcare sector as a whole?
Well, I've done extensive research on this, in preparing for today, and the short answer is I have no idea. Nor does anyone else, quite frankly. There's a lot of speculation. There's some things that we do know. I mean, yes, we have way too many of our medical expenses are controlled by other countries as far as pharmaceuticals, where they're manufactured at, and shipping, and also some medical devices and things like that. So could there be some disruptions in some of that chain? Absolutely. Is it a good idea that the majority of our pharmaceuticals and devices and things are produced in other countries? Probably not. Probably not a good idea. So that's something that needs to be or should have been looked at and corrected in the past. And do we know exactly how those tariffs are going to play out? No, we don't. I mean, like I said, there is speculation. If you go to the internet and you read, which I caution people not to do, because 99% of that is going to be doom and gloom. The world's coming to an end, and you might as well just roll over now and just say goodbye. But that's not really the case. But my background, coming from a Marine Corps existence back in the day, many days ago, what I have a tendency to do is try to focus on what the controllables are. And I think that we talked about a moment ago. What can you control? How can you affect your own health to make sure you keep your health care costs down? If we're going to constantly rely on the government to be the arbitrator of what our health is and what the costs are, I think we're in a bad spot. And so, there are a lot of things that are built into, especially when you talk about Medicare or even Medicaid. I think Medicaid, people that are on Medicaid may have a little bit more concern. I think that's a bit of a target, especially from some of the things that DOJ is doing and some of the fraud. But we've known about rampant fraud in Medicaid and Medicare for years. Trey and I know you work in the Medicare sector as well as I do. Every year we have to go through classes and certifications on waste, fraud, and abuse, and we know it's rampant. And that's like the highest level of study and that we have to do every year in certification. We have to recertify every year with every carrier, with everybody, because there is so much of that. And rooting that out from my perspective, from being a Medicare agent or healthcare agent, is really important, because it does affect a lot of people's costs. And we want to be able to hold those costs down as possible. We also have to be careful where we place the blame. We've been seeing large increases in Medicare supplement costs prior to any tariff talk. We had 10% increases, 12% increases, and a lot of people would like to blame the current administration for that. The problem is those increases came out before the current administration was there. So I'm not placing blame. I'm saying we just have to be careful of where we put that, because those inflationary things that have been going on for the last 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 years are now catching up in a lot of ways, and which is now causing us to have to take some drastic measures that a lot of people aren't necessarily happy with. So is it going to affect healthcare? Absolutely, I think it will in some ways, because as costs go up, that's got to be passed along to somebody. I do know that in CMS's final ruling the other day, they've actually increased the amount of money that they're putting into Advantage plans, for the coming year, which will help. So could there be a lot of changes? there could be, but we really need to wait and see.
You know, none of these elements of an effective retirement plan have to be a surprise. If you have a team that is working together to prepare you for the road ahead, do you have that team? If not, Market Advisory Group is here to help. All it takes is a 15-minute introductory phone call to learn if Market Advisory Group is the right team for you. Go ahead and set up that 15-minute phone visit now. Just dial 833-MAG-REPORT. That's 833-624-7376, or you can visit our website at ionretirement.com to schedule. There, you can also check out past episodes where we focus on different client stories where retirement went wrong. Stay tuned. In the next segment of Ion Retirement, we come back to answer a viewer question about estate planning. We'll be right back. Hi, and welcome back into Ion Retirement. We're going to turn to a viewer question for this segment. If you'd like to submit a question for us, possibly to answer on a future episode, just go to ionretirement.com and click Submit a Question. This question comes from an anonymous viewer. They ask, should I put my house in a trust to protect it from the government taking it? I have a will for my daughter, and is that not enough? Gerald, what do you have to say to this viewer?
Well, I think when he mentions the government, the only thing that comes to mind is the possibility of long-term care and Medicaid. Because really that's the only way, other than through taxes, the government is going to take anything from you. That's a concern of a lot of people that I see on a regular basis. You know, they reach an age where they're retired, they have paid off their mortgage, and they have a good lifestyle, they have sufficient income coming in, and the idea of a long-term event for one of the spouses is terrifying, because what about the house? And what happens to our kids? You know, we built this mini fortune, if you would, in the value of the house, and we wanted to pass that on and bless our kids, and could that be extinguished? And so the issue is really, can you put it in a trust to protect it from the government? The answer is yes, but not just any trust. Most people, when they talk about trust, they talk about revocable trusts. And revocable trusts have no protection whatsoever. A revocable trust is intended to pass assets to your heirs without having to go through probate and facilitate that process, as well as being able to allow you to control some of the distribution process. But there is no protection from creditors. There's no protection from the government, because when you have a living trust, revocable trust, which is the same, they're synonymous, you continue to own that property. As far as legally as the government is concerned, that's your property. If you have a creditor that sues you, that's still your property. So you cannot protect it in regular revocable trust. You need to take steps to do certain things to create what's called an irrevocable trust. And there's pluses and minuses to that very move. One of the things that with a revocable trust, you can always make changes. You can get ticked off by one of your kids and lower the percentage of inheritance. You can then include grandchildren as they're born. All of these things you can do with a revocable trust, because it's by nature revocable, which means it's amendable. They can be amended and changed. An irrevocable trust, by its nature, it's not subject to change. So whatever you decide to do at the moment you create it, you're stuck with. So if you decided to leave, you know, a percentage, say 30% to one child who later on becomes estranged or marries somebody who is an opportunistic spouse or whatever, and you don't want that money to go to them anymore, just to protect them, you can't do anything. You set it up in the trust at the beginning, and you forget it. So that's one of the downsides. The upside is that in creating a revocable trust and transferring your property, and it doesn't have to be just a house, but any property you transfer to an irrevocable trust, if it's properly written, If it's probably that, one of the things we do is Medicaid Asset Protection Trust is one of our specialties. And these trusts have to be written in a particular way to account for all the different requirements and all the different, impediments Medicaid puts in your way to be able to safeguard your assets. But if you put it in a trust like that, then you no longer have ownership of the property. So it's removed from your ownership. It remains in your estate, meaning that when you go at the end of your life and when both you and your spouse pass away and you exceed the state tax exemption, that money that you gave away or that house that you gave away to the irrevocable trust is still considered part of your estate for the purpose of estate tax payments. But as far as accessible to creditors, it becomes immediately inaccessible when you transfer the asset. And for Medicaid purposes, if you do it 5 years prior to requiring Medicaid, you can have that house completely protected. It's almost like it's invisible. It doesn't exist because you don't own it anymore. The 5-year lookup period has gone by. And that's what we tell people to plan ahead of time. Starting at 85 years old, it's a little tricky because that means that in order for the trust to protect you, the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust you have to live at least, another 5 years. So I recommend sometimes people looking at it when they're 60, in their 70s, and begin making that particular inquiry and see how we can best help them to be able to transfer those assets. And so part of the thing is we have a team because this requires many different people looking at, you change asset types, there's tax consequences, there's advisory consequence. So that's why we work together to help our clients to protect their assets.
Absolutely. There are many reasons that you need to ask yourself, am I getting everything I need from my financial advisor? Because most of these financial firms don't have the tax component or healthcare or estate planning advisors in-house. Market Advisory Group, that's exactly what we do. And all it takes to find out if we're the right team for you is a 15-minute phone call. If you'd like to set up a 15-minute introductory phone call with Market Advisory Group, just to see if we're the right fit for you, reach out right now at 833-MAG-REPORT. That's 833-624-7376, or do so at our website, ionretirement.com. You can also search for Ion Retirement on YouTube, where we upload all of our past episodes for you to watch on demand. That's all the time we have for this episode. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Trey Bassa, along with the entire panel, reminding you that we're here to keep an eye on retirement.
Unless otherwise indicated, all client and prospect names mentioned on this show have been changed to protect the identities of the individuals discussed. Investment advisory services are offered through Foundations Investment Advisors LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The content provided is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The views, statements, and opinions expressed herein are those of the individual speakers and not necessarily those of Foundations and its affiliates. The information contained herein does not constitute an offer to sell any securities or represent an express or implied opinion or endorsement of any specific investment opportunity, offering, or issuer. Any discussion of performance or returns are not indicative of future results. Each individual investor situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Foundations only transacts business in the states where it is registered or excluded or exempt from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by security regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. No legal or tax advice is provided. Always consult with a tax professional. Legal services are offered by Edelman Law Firm. Tax services offered by Market Tax Services. Market Advisory Group does not provide legal or tax advice. Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not in any way refer to investment advisory products. Rates and guarantees provided by insurance products and annuities are subject to the financial strength of the issuing insurance company, not guaranteed by any bank or the FDIC. The guest commentators featured in this show are not investment advisor representatives of Foundations and do not provide advisory services. Market Advisory Group does have several investment advisor representatives that can provide such services. This is not endorsed or affiliated with any U.S. government agency, the Social Security Administration, or associated with any federal Medicare program. We do not offer every plan available in your area. Any information we provide is limited to those plans we do offer in your area. Please contact Medicare.gov or 1-800-MEDICARE to get information on all of your options. A Roth conversion may not be suitable for your situation. The primary goal in converting retirement assets into a Roth IRA is to reduce the future tax liability on the distributions you take in retirement or on the distributions of your beneficiaries. The information provided is to help you determine whether or not a Roth IRA conversion may be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Please review your retirement savings, tax, and legacy planning strategies with your legal/tax advisor to be sure a Roth IRA conversion fits into your planning strategies. All rights reserved.